First one's boring anyway, so you can come in. My name's Jason. This talk is called Develop Like Google, but you'll see it's not only Google, it's Facebook, Microsoft, Uber, Twitter, like everyone's doing it. Sort of. So, this is off, hello, turn on, yay, great. So, I'm going to tell you about myself. I'm going to ask you some questions so I know who I'm talking to, and then I'm going to go through some common misconceptions because there's quite a few. My name is Jason G. I work some on Angular. I work on a tool called NX, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And then I also work on Nrwl, which is one of the sponsors. We help corporations develop like Google, and you're going to learn what that actually means today. So at Nrwl, we do consulting, we do engineering, we do training, right? So we'll go into a company and we'll help kind of level up the engineers. We're a bunch of experts. So either it's Angular experience, it's setting up a Monorepo, or just trying to help your developers be more successful at what they do, making products, making money, good stuff. So there's 3 products over there. NX is the first one. This is the one you're going to be hearing about today. This is the website. You can find out more on nx.dev, but I'll be talking about it today. So. The next one is the Angular console. If you use Angular, you might use the Angular CLI. Angular console is the UI for the CLI, and it's built like we have a plugin for VS Code, so you see it all over there. AngularConsole.com, you can learn more. Next is Nrwl Connect. So this is our developer empowerment platform. It has like quick recipes that help you solve your problems. It'll have like topic explorers so you can learn more about certain topics like BWAs, performance, stuff like that. And then also live events, courses, and I think the best thing is our books. So these are the books by people from Nrwl. We have 4 of them right now. They're all really good, especially if you're using Angular, but the second one is for everybody. So those are free if you're on the platform. It's free, you sign up. Yeah. So I have some questions for you guys. All right, how many people build products in your organization? Okay, surprisingly, not that many. How many are developers? Okay, I got more people there. Okay, how many people build multiple products? So like not just one, but like 2 or 3. Cool. Does your organization share code? So that means like publish NPM and stuff like that. No? Yeah. Okay. And then do you work in multiple repos? Okay, so I'm going to tell you you're wrong, but like it's not always the answer, but I'll tell you like some of the struggles with working in multiple repos, and I don't know, you can choose to continue, or like if it's working for you, that's great. And like many corporations are successful doing multiple repos, so you'll be fine. All right, JavaScript developers, cool. And then have you used NX? All right, great. So nobody's using NX. I'm going to tell you more about it. Here's some common misconceptions. So a lot of people think that Monorepos is one big thing, and it's all about putting your code in the same place. In reality, that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to it, and I'll tell you about it today. Next thing is how you store your code is not how you ship and not how you build. So if you think of a warehouse, you store a lot of products there, but you don't ship them all at once. And a lot of people think that if all your code's in one place, then it has to be built all at once and shipped all at once, and it's just not true. A monorepo is not a monolith. Okay, so like in the world of microservices, micro front-ends, monoliths are, they're pretty bad. They're slow to build, they're slow to deploy. You can't break out a piece of it and just deploy that. Monorepo is not the same thing, right? A monolith is one huge thing that you can't split up. A monorepo actually facilitates modularizing your code even better. Okay? So now that we're done with that, I can go to the fun part and talk about NX. All right. So NX allows you to develop like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Uber, Twitter, lots of big people. So how does that actually work? And then I'll go into why they actually do it. So how? They probably use a framework. Some choose Angular, some choose React. If your framework's up to you, But like this doesn't even have to be a framework. It can just be regular, like down to the metal code. So they probably do more than one application. They might do a backend application, and that symbol over there is Nest, a little cat thing, and then React, whatever you want. And then they share a lot of code between these applications. Like if you have 3 applications, you don't want to be writing everything 3 times. So they'll share a lot of code, which is what those symbols are, and they'll be recurring throughout the presentation. But they do it all in this thing called a Monorepo. Like everything's all in one place. You probably, like people that raise their hands that use multiple repos, you have multiple repos, and then like code is linked some other way, right? But these companies, a lot of successful companies, they choose this pattern to store all their code in one place and use that to their advantage. So when we go into why, what's wrong with multi-repos, right? Like GitHub has tons of them. If you look into just one repo, you need to put it on GitHub so that other people can get it, right? You need to probably publish it to NPM if you want somebody else to get it from outside the repo. Then you need to set up some build tools, like you might be using TypeScript, or you need Webpack, you need to set those up. And you need to set up CI and testing, right? So this all takes some time, but you'd think like maybe if you do it once, you can do it again, easy peasy, and then you get this, right? So like everything, every repo needs these kind of things. You have a ton of libraries, you have a ton of applications, you've set it up 6 times, right? And this is like the minimal example that I'll be going through in terms of like how much code your company might have, right? But like you could have only one app, and you could have like split out modules, and you would need to set up some build tools and stuff like that for them. Okay, so how does the Monorepo help? This is a subset of the same projects. With the Monorepo, you set up your tools, they're there, and then you add up new projects, right? And they're just, they work with the same tools that you already have. You don't need to set it up again. It's already there. There's also dependencies between these projects. Like they're not like independent, floating around. Like sure, there might be multiple repos, but they all depend on each other. Like you own the code, all the code for a reason. And it's because they work with each other to achieve what you want to achieve. So they all depend on each other. And if you say, hey, I work on the React app, I want to change something in this library, so you say, all right, I got to work on that library, right? Pull down the repo, make your changes, make a pull request, yada, yada, yada. And then you can publish it to NPM. And then you can go out and work on the app, right? If you're dealing with multiple repos, you probably do this quite often. It's great that you have it in a separate repo, but it requires a lot more steps to do what you want. Versus in a monorepo where you're allowed to make atomic changes, which just means that like when you need to make a change, you just go and make the change everywhere, and then you commit it all at once. You don't have to pull multiple repos, get multiple people involved, or like anything, right? Like it's just all one place. Another thing is version mismatch. So when you have dependencies, you will depend on the version of it, right? So the library on the left over there, that is depending on version 1.0 of this like bottom library, right? Which is all great until bottom library decides, hey, we're gonna make it 2.0. Left library is still on version 1, and the right library is on version 2. So then the app at the top, when they go to build, they're like, what do I use? Do I use version 1 or do I use version 2? Right? And this might happen just because, for the people that maintain library on the left are just busy right now. They don't want to update to version 2, and like your end product actually suffers from it, right? So this is what's known as a diamond dependency problem. It's a well-documented issue about multiple repos and like versioning your dependencies and stuff like that. So the solution is, once again, monorepos. So same diagram over there, everything's in one repo. There's only one version in play at any time, right? Like every time you make a change, you can make a change to everything, but in your repo, there's only one version. It's the current version. You never have to worry about updating it and stuff like that. It just kind of evolves with your repo. So everything's here. Okay, so a lot of people say, as I was talking about before, all my code's in one place. I don't want to deploy all my code, so I'm going to split it up, right? So if you want to make a change to the React app, you just want to make a text change, you don't want to deploy everything. So don't, right? Like just build that application and then ship it to your users. Everyone's happy. Everything else stays the same. Like the libraries never got touched, and the other applications, they don't need to change at all. So the similar question is what gets tested. Whenever you make a change, you want to test all your changes to be confident about where you're changing and not breaking stuff. So if I'm working on that library down there to the right, what gets tested, right? Usually if you're in one repo, you should kind of just test everything, right? That's the easiest way to do. You don't have to think about it. Just kind of run all the tests, right? But in a monorepo, and when you see these dependencies being drawn, you don't have to test everything. You only have to test the things that get affected. So if I change that library, React app is using it, well then I need to test the React app and I need to test that library. But the Angular app and the Nest app over there, you don't need to touch them. So that's about why they do this, right? I think these are some compelling reasons. So I'm going to tell you about a tool called NX. It was developed by Nrwl. As I said, we help corporations build like Google. And along the way, we just we quickly learned the tooling needs to be there for this to happen. Those things that I talked about, like deciding what gets tested, you don't want to be the one doing that. A person doesn't want to be the one doing that. That should be automated in a tool. So that's what NX is. The first 2 points I'm going to kind of just breeze through because that's not what the topic of this talk is, but they're amazing. So I'm going to go through them real quick. NX allows you to use modern tools out of the box. If you're in the JavaScript ecosystem, you might have heard of things like Prettier, Jest, Cypress, Nest, and basically anything. The abstractions are in there. You can use anything you want. You're not locked into the set of tools by any means, but some of the more modern ones that have some kind of advantages over the old ones, they're available out of the box for you. And you also get to build full stack. So in order to ship an application, you probably don't just build a front end and a static website and ship it. Most serious applications will have a back end, you'll have a database, you'll have tons of stuff, right? And you'll want to work on that stuff. And if it's all in one place, that's even better. And then the last thing is develop Google, Facebook, Microsoft, people that are successful. And I'll go into 3 different reasons, or 3 different ways that NX helps you build like them, but it all boils down to being holistic about how you do things, so everything's in one place, being intelligent, right? So deciding what needs to be built, what needs to be tested, and not doing anything more than you have to, right? All that time goes to waste. And then being consistent. When you have a lot of projects, a lot of code, a lot of engineers, you want to be consistent throughout the whole thing so that everybody can get the latest best practices, you can define them for yourself and stuff like that. So to be holistic, Google builds a lot of products, right? And I'm saying they're one of the companies that not only use this method of keeping everything in one place, but they pioneer it. They spend a lot of time into building their infrastructure so that they allow this type of development, and they build a ton of products, right? And if they all live in this repo, right, it works for them. And cohesive teams build cohesive products. So it's not just about your dev experience. It's not just about keeping everyone working in different projects separated. But if you build them all in the same place, they're going to feel more cohesive. And when the end user gets that product, they're going to feel wow, this company really has it figured out. And I mean, you can ridicule Google about how many different products they have. But even this slide, which I just kind of threw together, you can see how it feels sort of united and cohesive, and you kind of just know it's from the Google brand, right? And other companies like Microsoft, Facebook, once again, they all built this way, and I think they have a pretty good track record of successful products. The next thing is being intelligent about what you do, right? So we were talking about working on the project over there to the right. And NX has this thing called affected, and will allow you to do effective test, effective build, and it basically just says hey, if you're working on that library over there, you only need to worry about the two products over there, or like the two projects over there. So whether it's testing it, building it, linting it, like whatever, or like just worrying about it, right? Like sometimes you make a change and you're like, oh, I really hope I didn't like take down the front page or something like that. You don't have to be worried about it anymore. This will kind of tell you like you're safe or you actually affected everything, right? And maybe you should break it up into smaller changes and stuff like that. Next is a dependency graph. So this is another command by NX. We statically analyze your code. We'll figure out the dependencies for you, so you don't have to like maintain these dependencies. You could, but we can do it for you. So you can visualize how your code looks. And this is only two applications. The rectangles over there, one of them client, one of them admin. These are only two applications, but there's like 5 shared libraries, right? And like usually some architect will go and make a diagram. They'll post it on your internal wiki. They'll be like, guys, this is our systems architecture, right? And then like the next day, somebody will be like, I just created a new piece, but didn't add it to the diagram. So it's like out of date already. We automatically generate this for you. You can do this whenever you want. Any developer can just, from their terminal, generate this dependency diagram and kind of say like, oh, you know, the bug I am working on needs to be, probably needs to be done in admin feature permissions. I wonder what is affected by that, right? And usually you tend to go to a separate document and talk to like someone that's worked there for like 12 years, and then you'll know like, oh, by the way, you're about to break the front page, like don't work on that. So, yep, we visualize it for you. And this makes something that's usually very complicated, very visual and simple, and you can look at it, you can keep track of it over time. You can sometimes see like circular dependencies in here and a lot of neat stuff. So to be consistent, you can't just have a bunch of code in one place and say like, all right guys, it's the Wild West, you know, everyone can depend on everything else. Sometimes you want to constrain these things. So you can tag your projects. This is just kind of an arbitrary string that you come up with. What we usually recommend and what's a good starting place for most organizations is you tag them by the type of code that's in that project, and you type them by the scope that you hope that that project's used by. So you can scope something to like just your application, right? Or you can scope things to like, hey, this is shared, everybody should be using this, so please use it. And if you're not part of that scope, don't use it, right? So when you go and make these dependencies, it'll actually yell at you through a linting rule that, hey, you know, like libraries should not depend on libs, it should go the other way around, and state should not depend on UI. I don't know how many front-end developers are here, but it's just a general bad practice. And one more thing is workspace schematics. So NX as a tool generates a lot of code for you. So like if you want an application, if you want a library, it'll generate that for you. It works with a lot of different frameworks, right? But sometimes you might want your own. Something about code generation that's hard to get right is having the right amount of options for everybody. And every organization wants their own setup for how to do a component, how to do like an application. So you can actually write your own schematics or code generation and enforce your own standards, right? Another thing this is good for is going through all of your code, since it's in one place, programmatically refactor it to like the new best practice that you came up with, or like a new function that you wrote that replaces an old one. Instead of making that change in 10 different repos and then saying like, all right, you know, I spent like 2 years doing this, finally migrated over to the new version, you can just automate that in your one repo. And Google does this at scale, right? Like all of their C++ code, all of their Python code, all of their JavaScript, Java, like that all gets automatic migrations. And in fact, like they make, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but a majority of the commits made to their repo is from an automated process that just handles making commits at a large scale. So those are the things that NX does for you. I wanted to leave a bit more time because I think there'll be questions, especially people that haven't used a Monorepos before, like heard about it. You can follow us. Nrwl is at @Nrwl_IO, so please follow us on Twitter, website, Nrwl.io. I'm at Frozen Pandas, pretty much everywhere, and then you can follow NX as well. So nx.dev as you saw before, and also at NX DevTools on Twitter. So you can follow kind of like tips and tricks for how to do this. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation here. I hope everyone has questions for me. Otherwise, I can do like a live demo if you want, so you can see how the tool works. But I'm gonna try and give you guys a chance to do questions first. Anybody?
Up first.
Yes.
Do you have a go-to strategy for companies that are using oodles and oodles of repos to start them on the path towards getting down to one single repo, or just paring down the number that they use?
Yeah, so it's up to your organization. It's actually down to the people. If the people are actually just working as a team already, and it's like one team and they just happen to have multiple repos, I think the better solution is just to like dive in, put everyone in the same repo, maybe like break a couple rules here and there, and then like fix those as it gets better and go from there. Right, so those are things like the dependency constraints that you saw before, like maybe lids can like depend on apps for now, but those are like temporary like practices that you want to shake off. If your corporation is say like ginormous or everyone's actually already siloed, working in separate teams already, you might want to dedicate like one team to kind of start the monorepo, make sure all the infrastructure is in place, so that once it's in place, you can just kind of start adding teams on as they're ready. So it depends on your organization. Do it all at once, do it one at a time. And use tools where you can. You like automate it, but that's a little bit more advanced. Sometimes it's better just to do the manual labor. Yes?
So you mentioned all the good stuff about monorepos. What are some bad things?
So some of the bad things is like some of the reasons why it might not work for you is if you're doing client projects. So I asked like how many people are building products, and the reverse of that is people like us, like ironically, that deal with multiple different clients, right? And they definitely don't want their code right next to another person's code. So privacy, not in terms of like, you know, your personal data or whatever, but like privacy of the code, right? Becomes sort of an issue. You can constrain those dependencies as we talked about before and say like, hey, the scope for this is like just my application. We don't do it now, but Google actually has like a more kind of like rigid sense of like ownership. So like you don't lose ownership by any means in a monorepo. It just kind of gets hidden. Like GitHub does a lot of ownership for you. So like just by having a repo, this is for better or for worse, you'll have like permission set up, right? But for a monorepo, like everybody just gets added to the one repo, right? So there's other ways to go about it. How I like to say it is that like everybody has visibility into all of the code. You work at the company, you should be able to see like the back end, even if you don't work on it and stuff like that. But who actually owns it and like handles reviewing the code and merging it in and actually committing the change to it, that can be constrained, right? Like that's organizational. You can say like, hey, you know, my team is the only team that can touch this really core library because, you know, bad things happen, like bad things get merged in here. So yeah, like that's one of the bad things. It becomes a concern, but it's an addressable problem. Google has it. We just don't have any like wide solution for you because you might not be using GitHub and stuff like that. Any other questions? Yes.
What's the largest number of single repositories that go to production that you've seen a company use?
The like number of projects?
Different repositories.
Okay.
Like if they're using GitHub Enterprise and they have all these different repos.
Yeah, so some of our clients are like big banks, and they just have like many lines of business, they'll call it. So like, if you imagine a bank, they'll do like auto loans, house loans, car loans, stuff like that, right? And those are all split up. So I imagine some of our clients have upwards of like 15, 20 projects in multiple repos. And like, they've been doing it, but they feel the problems.
Have you seen companies with hundreds of repos?
Yeah, like if you imagine Google would like split up their projects like that, there'd be hundreds. Like Microsoft also doesn't have all of their code into one monorepo. And like Windows is their biggest monorepo, but they'll also have like other projects all in the same monorepo. I guess that's another like, I don't know, like disclaimer is that like not your whole company has to be in one repo, right? Like you can still divide it up into multiple repos, but I like the general thing that I guess like from someone that's worked with monorepos before is that the way that businesses and teams divide up the repos is like way too aggressive right now. It's just like it's a back end, so it has to be separate from the front end, and that's not always the case. Yeah. Other questions? Do I have time for a demo?
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright,
Let's see it.
so I'm gonna drop this way. Is this mic on? In here, this is already an existing repo, so that's boring, right? So I have this lovely temp directory. You can do npx create nx workspace. I'm going to use the latest version, and then call it whatever you want. So I'm going to call it DevTO. All right, so this is going to go install NX, the tool that I was talking about, and like scaffold an empty workspace for you. So this is not going to have an application yet. It's not going to have any libraries. Like you can't deploy this anywhere. But it does have the infrastructure for you to start building things into it, right? For any JavaScript developers here, I'm going to just choose React as a preset, and this is going to stick a React app into my project to begin with.
Yeah.
This is going to take a while, yada yada yada. Never do live installs on stage if you can avoid it. But I mean, if I'm telling you to create something, it's kind of hard. So it's creating more stuff. Let it go. Any questions? No? Okay. So I'm using React here. You can also use Angular. You can use like any JavaScript you want. Basically, technically the technology is there to be abstracted, so you can use Java and other languages as well, but it's not up there yet. People haven't done it and stuff like that. Yeah, so this is our new project. Whoa, this is the wrong thing. Let's okay, so this is our repo. It has an apps directory. Those are like the icons you saw at the top, and it has a libs directory, which is like shareable code, right? Our apps directory has like DevTO, right? That's the name I gave this project. This might be an app for attendees to be able to like network with other people, right? But then, you know, if I'm the organizer, I might want to generate like another application, and this one's for admins, right? Like this one, maybe you manage users, you say like, hey, there's an event tonight, stuff that you don't want general public to be able to do. So we're gonna split this out into a different application, right? I'm gonna choose some like default configuration. That's gonna go and do that. So I actually haven't like set any dependencies yet, right? I'm gonna go ahead and do yarn depth graph. I can't spell. So this is our dependency graph. These two applications don't depend on each other, right? If I zoom in, you can see one's called DevTO, one's called admin, right? And there's end-to-end applications that depend on them, but they're just end-to-end tests, right? So if I go back to the code here, if I generate a library, this is a bad name for it, and you shouldn't really do this because you want to split up your project so that they can be testable. Logic. Listen to the last one. So you want to split up your project as much as possible. For demonstration, I'm just going to assume that like you have this one core library that everyone uses, right? So that's generated, and so I'm going to run depth graph just to show you that it's there. It's not going to be that exciting. Don't hold your breath. That's our new library right here, right? And this is TypeScript, JavaScript code, whatever you will. If I go into my application, right, like I'm just navigating to this place in my repo, if I look at the code, I can import that library, say DevTO/core, right? That's our library. We hit save. Now I'm depending on a different project from my DevTO app, right? The app that everyone uses. If I say our graph again, I'll show you the prettier version. How about that? So this is Angular console. If we go and look at the dependency diagram, we'll exit this out so it looks nice. You'll see DevTO end-to-end. That thing's happening when you zoom in. Okay, so actually live, I am added to my admin app. But anyway, so you can see admin end-to-end depends on admin, depends on core, right? And if I were to make a change to core, so let's just emulate that with a button press, you only need to test this part of the repo. So if I click the test affected button, this is going to run the tests for DevTO, core, and admin. Sorry. So, 1 second. Getting ahead of myself. All right. What just happened? I just closed. No. Okay. 1 second. I'm going to commit all this to Git. Hello, DevTO. Okay. And that's it. Okay. So now I'm going to actually make a change. So if I go back to my projects here, try to zoom in so everyone can see. If I go down to my library, this is the one that I generated, it's called core, and say whenever I import this, I want to say console.log hello DevTO, right? So now I've made a change. And if I open the dependency diagram again, you'll see that part of it is already highlighted, right? This portion of it is red, the top portion is still grayed out. It's for this intensive purposes, not important right now because it's not being affected. There's no way that the change that I made is going to affect that application. So when I go and test whatever's affected and run this, you'll see that only core and admin show up here, right? Those are the two apps that are affected by this change. And you'll see core test passed, admin tests hopefully pass. I mean, they should. So now you know that this change is good. You didn't have to test the DevTO app, right? So this is just for testing. As I said, affected lets you do building, lets you do linting, and just do the most minimal amount of work that you can in order to verify that all your code is safe. But code collocation is part of it because if all the projects are in one place, it's really hard to say hey guys, I published a new version of my npm package. Everybody, number one, update your code and then test it. Let me know if it works, and then I'll fix anything that doesn't work. This can all be done at once. All these checks can be run before anything gets committed into the repo and stuff like that.
Ship it.
I could, but yeah. Any questions after that?
What was the E2E, end-to-end convention? What was that? So you created this DevTO and it was DevTO end-to-end?
Tests.
Yeah, so these are the projects that were created. Admin is your source code, and you would build this and ship it, I guess not too far because it's your admin app, right? But for the end-to-end test, this is just another application that has kind of automated end-to-end or integration tests, which aim to test your whole system, right? So that whatever the user sees, it still works. If I wanted to run this, I have the admin end-to-end test over here. Click run end-to-end, and this uses Cypress. So Cypress is a way to automate your testing. It's like Selenium if you used that before, and eventually a window will pop up 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Yay! Right. So this is a test that we wrote. It just says like make sure it says welcome to admin, and then quickly shut it down. Say everything works. If we go back to the project, we will see. Where is it? Another reason why I should use a Monorepo is so that you don't have to open like 10 windows. That everything passed, right? So those are like meant to emulate a user and to make sure that you can log into the site, you can like publish a comment and stuff like that. Any other questions? Generally, I get a lot of questions about the tools, but I kind of like skipped over that a little bit, so I wanted to like focus on Monorepo a bit. But yeah.
If you had like a Node.js backend code base, a separate code base, I guess. For
Yeah.
that. Is that are the dependencies illustrated between the front end and the back end, or is it just within?
If it's a separate repo
Yeah.
outside of it, no. Like this only works for inside your repo. It's kind of hard to say like
No, like if it wasn't within the repo.
if it was within the repo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
If it's the front end depended on some back end service.
Yeah, so everything in NX is kind of like a la carte. So if you don't use Node or you don't use React, you don't have to install it when you're installing the other stuff. It just kind of like keeps everything separated so you get the latest amount. Once again, like being efficient and only needing what you need. So you can add stuff in. I'm going to add in Nrwl. I'll use Nest because that's the what we showed before. But it's just a Node.js application. This is installing it and running some just like setup, right? I'll generate this application. I'll show you how to set up that dependency. Generally, like we analyze the code, so it will say like, hey, you have this application which is the back end and this which is the front end, and they don't actually have code dependencies on each other, right? They don't point at each other. They'll point at like an endpoint, right? But that's not like a clear indicator of like this is the project that runs that, right? So I'm going to generate a @Nrwl/node app, and I'll call this my API. Default options. This will generate. Okay, so I'm gonna have two separate applications, like I just said. I'm not gonna have any dependencies on each other. But something that you might want to do is like typings, right? When you call an API, it'll be like, what does this author object look like, right? So another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a library, and this time I'm going to use our Nrwl workspace library, right? And I'm going to call this text. I can type surprisingly well, even standing up. I'm surprised too. Okay, so let's say that this project, I'm going to go in and say my types here, right? I'm going to export an interface called attendee, just because this is what this app is for. They're going to have an ID, which is a number, and a name, which is a string, right? So this type is going to be used by both the attendees app and the API. Right? So for my API, if I go into my application, this is just how they look. Don't worry too much about it. Okay. I messed up a little bit. I'm just going to try again. @Nrwl nest app and API 2, because I really created it.
Version 2 already.
Yeah, version 2. First one I created is like just a Node.js app, which has like print out hello to the console. I'm too lazy to write my own server, so I'm just gonna generate another application and have a server set up for me. So API 2, hooray! We did it. We created a whole new server. Okay, so this is going to be an endpoint that we call, instead of returning this thingamajiggy, right? I'm just going to return, I'm going to say this method returns a attendee. Did I spell that correctly? Maybe, maybe not. And then this is going to come from my library, right? That's so this API uses this type. It's probably yelling at me because this is the wrong type. Whatever, ID is 0, and name is Jason. Right? That's my name. I'm in Sandy. Right? So now you can see our graph. From this diagram, you can see your types library here is being dependent upon API 2. And what else would be great is if our front end, right, also depends on it. So I'm going to choose the other app because I haven't given it much love yet. Application, let's go into like a React thing. And I'm going to do the same thing. Let's say like the props, you get an attendee and attendee, right? And I'm going to go ahead and import attendee from that DevTO/host. Right, so I've made 2 dependencies onto the same type base. Right, and if I go and I do your network again, so now you'll see like your API and the DevTO app both depend on an attendee, right? So now when I commit everything, don't lie, you make these commits too sometimes. So I'm going to go to my attendee or my types, right? And I'm going to say, hey, you know, this guy also has a birthday, and it's the number, right? So now I'm going to change to the attendee. The API too, and the DevTO app like should know about this, right? Like there's new information that needs to be tested. Maybe I deleted the name or something, right? Like that needs to be tested. And usually you publish like a backwards compatible API and stuff like that, but it's just complicated. So with the Monorepo, you don't have to do it because if I make this change, I can see like it can figure out, ooh, this color doesn't show up too well. Anyways, you can see how this is a slightly lighter, right? It's actually like bright red, like hard to look at on a computer screen. It's just not being shown well here. But like you can see that both API 2 and DevTO would have to run other tests, other end-to-end tests, and like when I submit this pull request, like the CI system is going to run those tests and tell me whether or not everyone has adjusted for this change and whatever, right? So this is another way you can say that like an API and a front end that both depend on the same data are kind of both affected by the change, right? The other way is say like DevTO like actually points to API 2, right? So it would make sense for you to draw a dependency there. Whatever we can't analyze with code, you can just kind of tell us and we'll add the information on top. So if I go into, there's a configuration file here called annex.json, and I have a project called DevTO, right? I'm going to add what's called an implicit dependency, but you can just kind of think of it as a dependency, right? And then this is going to depend on API 2, right? So now when I do depth graph, you'll actually see a line being drawn from DevTO to API 2. Yes. Right? So like if we can't see it through code or like you just know things that we don't, you can give us more information and we'll put it into this graph, and this information will actually be used for like saying what's affected. So if I only make a change to API 2, I still want to run the end-to-end tests for the DevTO front-end application, right?
Any other questions?
Questions?
Good, thank you.
good. So that's the final talk, but don't go yet. There's some drinks. I'm going to put up this, lots of food. I'm going to put up the tweet if you are interested in attending the conference tomorrow, National Conference. It's at King and John at the TIFF building. And thank you all for coming out. Hope you had a good time.